Well, hi everyone. I'm John Ricklin with a retro review of John Cena and Batista's Ascension at WrestleMania 21, where John Cena and Batista won the WWE and the World Heavyweight Championship on the same night. Two new cornerstones, main eventers, two new pillars of a new era in WWE were made on the grandest stage of them all. But much like other retro reviews that I've done where I just want to talk about one central focus, you gotta look back and see what led to both these men in their respective careers getting to this point. And then I'm going to talk about their two title reigns as I close the video. So I hope you guys enjoy this and let me know what you guys think. And also, I've got a Hulk Hogan Ultimate Warrior WrestleMania 6 video coming up at some point. So we start off in 2002. I'm not going to go through the Ohio Valley Wrestling stuff, mainly because, not that it's not important, don't get me wrong. Both those guys, earned a lot of experience, gained a lot of traction in Ohio Valley Wrestling, but I'm focusing on their main roster runs. We start off with John Cena showing up and confronting Kurt Angle, and what do you possess that makes you think you can get in the ring with me? Ruthless aggression. He slaps him and he has that match, a pretty damn good match. And then he beats Chris Jericho at Vengeance. They build up all that stuff and everything with pretty damn shocking match. It was pretty good stuff. And then they didn't do anything with him. It was a little bit weird. And if you watch the John Cena episode of the Ruthless Aggression documentary series that WWE has, they were close to releasing him. And then the freestyle rapping thing happened because he had this tag team with Kidman, didn't really go anywhere, and then he had nothing feud with Kidman, and holy crap, he's about to get released. You're thinking John Cena, one of the biggest superstars in WWE, at least in the last 20 years, and box office wise, one of the biggest of all time. I mean, really, yes, adjusted for inflation and all that stuff, others could be bigger than him. But John Cena helped usher in a pretty damn popular era of WWE for a number of years, and then the company kept shoving him down our throats for a while, and then stuff happened. But John Cena worked really hard to get to where he was. As much shit as I give him for later in his career, up to this point, he was putting in the work and everything. And then the rap era Cena happened, the Doctor of Thugonomics, and that worked really well. He teamed with Bull Buchanan for a little bit. That didn't go anywhere. And then he ended up, doing some stuff in 03. Before I talk about that, we got to go to Batista, who came in as Deacon Batista. He had a freaking collection box around his neck and was teamed up with Reverend Devon. That was a good idea. It wasn't a good idea. They teamed up a little bit, didn't work. He feuded with Reverend Devon and then got sent to Raw. Was teamed with Ric Flair. Evolution was starting to form. He beat Kane at Armageddon in what was, not a great match, but it was a good way to get Batista over. It was a fine way to do some things, to show, hey, we're going to feature this newer guy. Not necessarily younger guy, because Batista was a lot older than a lot of people realize. But still, he made tremendous impact. I mean, anybody that can knock Batista or Cena, but Batista especially for the level of skill that he had and for his age and for, his body breaking down, even at that time when he was ascending to the main event, he made the most of it, and WWE did capitalize on quite a bit of it. So, that's their 02. They were kind of floundering around everything, but things were looking better as the end of 02 came along, and then 2003, Cena in the Rumble, has a decent showing, not a great showing. He has the rap battle that was supposed to, be him. I forget who he was supposed to rap with, since I don't really pay attention to mainstream rapping even back then. But it was at Mania 19. That didn't necessarily work out. It was kind of ridiculous. He then would feud with Brock, who was just coming off of beating Kurt Angle at WrestleMania 19. They faced off against at Backlash in a pretty damn good match. It was a really solid encounter. Brock would beat him eventually, but Cena was rising up the ranks and everything. He feuded with Taker into Vengeance 03, would even beat him on an episode of SmackDown. He debuted the FU instead of the F5, that would later become the Attitude Adjustment. He had that feud with Eddie Guerrero that ended in, when they were fighting on cars and everything, the parking lot brawl, some pretty good stuff. And him saying some crap about Eddie, that the racism stuff that would not fly today. And I'm not saying Cena was himself as racist, but boy, those lines, they really cut to the bone. But it was a different time. He then would have an eventual face turn after feuding with Kurt Angle with No Mercy. He would start to morph into a babyface because the crowd was starting to react more positively to him. He had a showcase at Survivor Series, lifting up the Big Show in a pretty impressive effort, doing the FU, the AA. And really shocking a lot of people. They were building him and everything. So by the end of 03, Cena was being built, and things were becoming a little more apparent that, he was going to be a guy to watch for. But we're still about a year away on that. As for Batista, he had an appearance. He was in the final few of that Rumble. But then he got injured and was out for a good portion. I think he had a torn tricep. He was out till about October 2003. So that whole thing of forming Evolution kind of got put on the shelf. Because Orton himself, I believe, suffered some kind of shoulder or collarbone injury. Maybe it was a shoulder injury. So they really weren't sure what to do with that. Flair wasn't injured. And then they did the whole Triple H Booker T storyline at WrestleMania 19. Oh boy, wasn't that fun. No, it wasn't. Batista would return in October of 03. He would lose to Shawn Michaels at Armageddon 2003. He would have a really good appearance at Survivor Series the month before, and having some pretty damn good matches there, or pretty good showcase in like the elimination match, getting smashed over like a monster. And then he would win the Raw Tag Team Championships with Ric Flair later that night. So even though Batista lost, he would, become Tag Team Champions with Flair. They held him for a bit, lost him to Booker T, and RVD would win him back. There would be a trade back and forth. So that's leading into 04. And then we get to Cena's 04. That was him in the Rumble, him taking a pretty scary bump and suffering a nearly horrific knee injury. I mean, it was a very scary moment because the way it looked like his leg snapped. Now, it didn't snap, thankfully, and I think he may have tweaked it. He may have sprained it, but he was okay. He would power through it. And then he feuded with Big Show and Kurt Angle, and then Kurt Angle would win a No Way Out and challenge Eddie Guerrero, while Big Show was a U.S. champion and would challenge Cena, or Cena would challenge him and would end up beating him using some dirty tactics, the chain gang, the chain that he had, to hit another FU. He'd be the U.S. champion for a while, would compete in a four-way at Judgment Day. He would feud with Booker T. They had a best of series. It actually wasn't that bad. It wasn't equal to what Booker T and Chris Benoit did in WCW for the TV title, but this was pretty damn good. And as things are going on with Cena, Carlito debuts, he beats him for the U.S. title in his debut. He would suffer a shoulder injury. Cena would win the title back from him soon afterwards, and then would feud with Carlito's bodyguard, Jesus. They would stab Cena in a nightclub. By the way, you know who Carlito's related to? Carlos Colon. The whole thing with the Bruiser Brody being stabbed at one point. It was stabbed and killed, by the way, on that Puerto Rico show. Oh boy, yeah. Maybe a bit tasteless right there. Yeah, tasteless. But it was also to write Cena off so he could go film The Marine. So, okay, cool. All right, we got that stuff with Cena. He was U.S. champion. He was building. He'd won the U.S. championship back. They were doing some good stuff here. Not everything was perfect, but he was being built. Meanwhile, Batista had that match at the Rumble. 3-on-2 match with Rock and Foley, Rock and Sock Connection at Mania 20. And he was being built. Now, he would kind of flounder a little bit in, after that and everything. It's like they didn't quite know what to do with him. Raw was a little bit weird at that point in 2004. He would beat Jericho at Vengeance 04. He would face Edge and Jericho at SummerSlam. Edge would be injured. Jericho and Christian, I believe, would compete over the Intercontinental Championship. And then he would team with Flair against Benoit and Regal at Unforgiven 2004, where Benoit and Regal would win. And he was part of the elimination match at Survivor Series. He was eliminated. That was Triple H against Team Orton. And Team Orton's team won, and Orton would be the sole survivor in 03, 04, and 05. And that would be his, in 04, his team winning, each man got to run Raw for a week. It was really bizarre. But that's going on and everything. And now we're going to 2005. Things are getting built because also they're starting to tease tension between Batista and Triple H. And meanwhile, we get to 2005. We get the Elimination Chamber match in New Year's Revolution where it's to crown a new world champion. Shawn Michaels is the referee. Triple H screws over Batista. Batista gets eliminated. Triple H would win the championship, would feud with Randy Orton into that Rumble. And Batista would be in the Rumble. Cena and Batista would be the final two. Cena was U.S. champion. They did that incredible double elimination that actually wasn't an elimination at all. And suddenly, Vince comes out and tears both the squads and is yelling at both guys and everything. What the hell are you doing? What the fuck? What's going on? I can't fucking believe that you guys would do this. And then they would restart the match. One guy would throw the other over the top rope, and one guy would, then the other guy would do the same to one that threw him over. Restarted the match. Batista won. Cool. And it was going to be Batista choosing between the two what he was going to do. But first, we had Cena as U.S. champion. Then he loses it to Orlando Jordan, of all people. Orlando Jordan was U.S. champion. Nothing against the guy, but he wasn't championship material. Then Cena would start his feud with JBL, and JBL was a WWE champion. Had been that since June of 2004. It's building on the stuff like Cena, you can't beat me, I'm a wrestling god, all this. They had the match at Mania that was okay. By that point, JBL was never really all that good of a worker anyway. Working in tag teams in the hardcore division hid the fact that he wasn't really all that good. He was a hard hitter. He wasn't all that good in the ring. But he was also dealing with like back injuries and stuff like that and probably being a fucking bully and all that. But that being said, I still thought his WWE Championship run was pretty good. Cena would beat him, celebrate in the crowd, and that was good. That was a good moment. But that wasn't even the main event. They would build up tension between Batista and Triple H. It would do the whole thing where, was he going to go face JBL on for the WWE Championship, or was he going to go face Triple H? And Triple H and Flair trying to talk him into going to SmackDown. It could be Evolution just dominating everything. Sure, Batista would have to leave his stablemates, but they could dominate the whole thing. And then Batista hears Triple H and Flair saying, well, Batista's enough of an idiot to fall for it. He's, too gullible and this kind of stuff. And Batista hears that. And it's like, okay, all right, I see how it is. So he does the famous thing where he's in the ring, puts on the Raw contract, has a SmackDown contract, does this, and just does just perfect. Batista, I think, was starting to learn, get the acting bug even at that point. He got that perfectly. Attacked Flair. Through Triple H, Batista bombing him through the table, and we were there. We were going, and they built that up really well. Apparently, Batista had an injured leg. I think he had, he couldn't feel his right leg or something like that. He had, nerve damage. But he beat Triple H in the main event, and that was something. They had something really going by that point. Batista and Triple H was quite the feud, and would continue after WrestleMania. But we get back to Cena, and we talk about his feuds with JBL and the Judgment Day, the I Quit match and stuff like that, which Cena bled buckets. That was insane. He got drafted to Raw a little bit later, and he would feud with Jericho and Christian at Vengeance 2005. So all this stuff from Mania on is just these two guys getting a chance to be the champions of their brand, and Batista, being anointed the guy. It actually was Cena that was the guy. And nothing against Batista. He worked incredibly hard and deserved every bit of accolades that he was getting. And sure, even with his attitude issues that he has admitted that he had, there was still a lot of good shit that both of them were doing. And these are two long title reigns that were built well. Cena, after getting drafted, as I said, beat Jericho at SummerSlam, starting the Cena sucks chance because people were getting a little bit annoyed with it. It was like, okay, now it's getting into almost Hulk Hogan territory where he's beating everybody. And then he feuds with Kurt Angle at Unforgiven and Survivor Series, and actually has a triple threat match also with Angle and Shawn, who had been feuding off and on throughout 2005. Mania 21, Vengeance 2005. Had a great, I believe, 30-minute Iron Man match on Raw Homecoming when they went back to USA. And that was a great match. And then the whole Taboo Tuesday thing, that was a weird concept. That and Cyber Sunday. The fans voting, even though I don't think the votes really counted. So he then blows up the feud with Kurt Angle at Survivor Series. And then we head into 2006, where he has the Elimination Chamber match and ends up surviving it. Carlito and Chris Masters were the last two in there with Cena. I know, shocking. And he manages to beat both of them. But Vince McMahon is like, okay, this show's not over, raise the cage. It's not over because this man is cashing in his Money in the Bank briefcase. The first ever Money in the Bank cash-in was Edge. He cashed in and beat Cena in after a couple spears and stuff like that, and won the WWE Championship. And would hold it for all of 3 weeks and then lose it back to Cena. And then Cena will retain against Triple H at Mania 22. So that stuff's going on there. Cena's being built, he's the guy and everything. Meanwhile, what's Batista doing? Well, he beats Triple H, Backlash 05, and then at Vengeance 2005 in a Hell in a Cell match. A really good blow-off. Now, I give Triple H a lot of shit, justifiably so, but he did put over Batista pretty goddamn strongly. This was good shit. And then he got drafted to SmackDown, feuded with JBL at SummerSlam in a match that was okay. He feuded with Eddie Guerrero at No Mercy 2005. And once again, for those that know me for a while, and for those longtime fans, and maybe even short-time fans, If you didn't watch wrestling, I'm not knocking. Maybe you can go back and watch it and you can see what Eddie meant. But no wrestler's death hit me harder than Eddie's. And I'm not trying to quantify it. Every wrestler's death, no doubt, is tragic in this great sport that we know. This is where I get a little serious, and then I'll get back to being a little funny. But Eddie's death really hit me hard. Like, he really did. That feud that he had going with Ray was pretty damn good, despite the custody of Dominic on a ladder thing. But then he feuded with Batista and the No Mercy thing. He was going to, like, cheat, and he didn't cheat, and he lost. And the whole build was going to be Eddie eventually beating Batista and taking the championship to WrestleMania, possibly. Maybe. We don't know. We'll never know, because unfortunately Eddie did pass away right before Survivor Series. And it affected Batista badly. It affected many people badly. I know, yes, we know what circumstances led to his death. It was a lot of abuse and a lot of stuff like that and everything, and not shying away from it. Still, Eddie's death hit me hard. So I'm going to get off that, but just wanted to say, I can't quantify just how great Eddie was unless you got to see him. Unless you're able to go back and watch any of his matches and understand, I really can't quantify it. You just have to see it. And I'm standing by that. So, we get back to Survivor Series. So, after Eddie's unfortunate, untimely death, we had the 5-on-5 SmackDown versus Team Raw. Orton ends up, being the sole survivor, and then Taker returns, lays out everybody and all that. But Batista then is suffering from some injuries. They team him with Ray, wins the tag titles while he's world champion. And then they would lose it. And unfortunately, he would have an injury at the hands of Mark Henry at a house show, I believe. Would have to relinquish the championship almost around the time that John Cena lost the WWE championship. So they win him on the same night, and then they lose him almost around the same time. Cena lost his on a cash-in. Batista lost his, unfortunately, due to an untimely injury. And both guys would go on to win multiple championships after this. Batista would miss WrestleMania 22. He would come back later in the year and would feud with Booker T, would eventually win it, face The Undertaker, so on and so on. But WrestleMania 21 was important because you had these two guys that had been built, maybe not perfectly, but as perfectly as you could get, especially in this Ruthless Aggression era, which is fondly looked back on even with some of the issues that it had. But this build for both guys, Batista mainly, that build with Triple H, I mean, it's one of Triple H's best feuds, easily one of Batista's best feuds, given the short career that he had. And so it makes sense that that Batista would want to have Triple H retire him at WrestleMania last year. But this was such a good build and such a great moment for both men, two new guys. They had been built for a couple years, coming from almost nothing. I mean, nothing against Ohio Valley Wrestling, but their beginnings. And they're winning mid-card championships, tag team or US. And just building up to WrestleMania was exactly what WrestleMania should be, about creating moments and creating memories. And WrestleMania 21 is not perfect by any stretch of the imagination. I may even do a retro review at some point in March. We will see. It just depends on time. But this is something that I fondly remember for those. So I would love to know what you guys think in the comments. Like, share, subscribe. Twitter handle in the description. I'm John Ritlin. I'll see you soon.